From Boston, Crockett's Victory Garden.
Welcome to Crockett's Victory Garden. I'm Jim Crockett, and today we have rain with snow flurries forecast for the mountains. Last year we had 34 days, consecutive Wednesdays of sunshine, but this year we're averaging a rainy day for every sunny one. Well, right now I'm digging some tulip bulbs. And I should say that for the last 6 weeks along by the greenhouse, we have had a wonderful display of tulips, but now they're entering the ugly stage. The flowers have faded, but the leaves are still lingering on. And it's very important that the leaves do linger on because the leaves are the manufacturing plant, part of the plant, which will build nourishment back in the bulbs again so that they can be used another year. What I'm doing with these bulbs, rather than just allowing them to stay in this location where I'm going to plant annuals, I'm going to move them over to another part of the garden and let them mature there. Let me show you one of these bulbs. This tulip bulb divided, as all tulip bulbs do after blossoming, into 3 bulbs. One is a pretty good sized one. That one is large enough to blossom next year. This one certainly won't, and it's rather doubtful if this little fellow here will blossom. Notice that they have this little covering on them. That will be the tunic that covers the bulbs. You know how they are. They're like brown, like little onions in the fall. Now, if I were to plant this whole thing in the fall, next spring, all I'd get with a bunch of leaves and 1 flower. Instead, we'll separate these according to size, plant the big ones where we want them to flower, plant the little ones in a row in the garden just as though they were beans. Let them grow on, the bulbs will get bigger year by year, and then we'll dig them each season, plant the larger ones for flowering. Now this is what we're going to do with these in planting. I'll take them over here to a trench that I have in the garden. And you see, we're just going to, what we might say, heel them in. Just lay them right down in the soil like that. There's nothing special to this. We'll cover this over with a little soil. Now, we'll add the rest of the varieties and label them so we'll know what we have here. And then, in the middle of the summer, after the foliage dies, dig all of these up, clean off the bulbs, put them in paper bags, and save them for the fall. Well, now today, we're going to inspect some grafts that we made on an apple tree about 6 weeks ago. I'm going to plant a silver fleece vine, one that will do in all parts of the country. Today we're going to plant some peanuts and some sweet potatoes. I'm going to go into the greenhouse and plant a strawberry barrel. And today we're going to plant tomatoes. Now tomatoes is something that you plant when the nighttime temperatures stay above 55 degrees. Well, let's take a look first of all at this apple tree. Now this was an apple tree of an unknown variety, and I decided that I wanted several good varieties on this one. Now apples, I should say about this, all apple trees are grafted. The root may be a seedling, but the variety such as this Macintosh here was a piece of the original Macintosh tree grafted onto the stem of the seedling tree. In this instance, we split open the stem, stuck in a wedge-shaped piece of the original, and now they're growing. Now let me show you that what we did was to stick in the wedge-shaped piece, wind it round and round with cotton twine, covered everything with grafting wax to keep out the air. Now, if I don't cut that string, the growth as it expands will be constricted. So we just take a knife and slice right down through there like this, all the way down. You see, we slice down to be sure that you cut the string. Now as it grows, you don't have to take the wax off. Don't take the wax off. All of this will heal. This branch will continue to grow. Now, we look at a couple of others. That was a Macintosh. This one is an old variety called Blue Pear Maine, a variety which not many people grow nowadays, but is one of the ancient ones. Up here we have a Gravenstein. You can see what a nice new growth we have from that one. This one has already 3 young branches coming, will be bearing fruit very soon. But everything in this garden doesn't grow. Here, for example, is a graft that didn't make it. Now this poor thing got hit on a windy day just such as this when the top of the cold frame cover came over and hit it. It hit this one too, and it's loose. And this fellow over here, which happens to be a Golden Delicious, is not quite out yet. I still have hopes for it. If it doesn't come, I won't graft again at this time of year. We will graft again next spring when the trees are dormant. And that's the big thing to remember. Do it before the buds swell. Well, now let's go down here. We'll plant a silver fleece vine. Very important that you know about this plant. Silver fleece vine is a very hardy plant which will grow in almost any garden in the United States or southern Canada. Late in the summer and early fall, this vine will be covered with a cloud of small snow white blossoms. It's a twining vine. Comes from China and Tibet. And this is the way that you're apt to get one from a garden center at this time of year. The garden centers get them dormant in the spring and pot them up for the convenience of the gardener. Now what I like to do before planting out something like this is to go over and cut out the dead wood. There's no sense in fooling with that anymore. We get rid of that right now. This one is cut that one back to about there. Now you see where the new growth is beginning to come out and already has made nearly 30 inches of growth. Will get up 8 to 10 feet tall during the summer. In planting it, now this plant is a well-rooted one, good solid root ball, easy to handle for planting. If you are to plant one of these, choose a sunny location, make a big hole 2 feet across, fill it at least 1/3 of the soil with peat moss and mix it in, and use a slow release fertilizer or maybe some organic matter, extra organic matter in the soil. In here I don't have to do that because I have enriched the entire bed. But in setting the plant in, just set it down at the same depth at which it has been growing. We'll fill some soil in around it here. And again, that right in there. It's very important to firm in the soil after you plant it. Now, of course, we'll make a nice saucer-shaped depression here and add water, and we'll add water all through the summer. Then the vines themselves, I'll give this first fellow just a little start coming up there. We'll do that the same thing with these others. And these vines will in very short time be right up to the top of the greenhouse, and we'll have flowers later this summer. We'll come back to this again and again. That's the silver fleece vine. Well, the next thing we want to do is to plant some peanuts. Now, peanuts are usually grown in the southern part of the country, south of Washington, D.C., because they need a very long growing season, a good 120 days or longer. They also need a rather poor soil, except that the soil does need limestone in it. And so, because I have enriched the soil in this garden, we excavated the good soil out and put in some poor soil just for the peanuts. Now, peanuts are legumes, the same family as peas and beans, and like peas and beans, they extract nitrogen from the atmosphere. There should be some superphosphate and maybe some potash in the soil, but not much nitrogen. There's no trick in planting them. This is what you start with. That's an ordinary peanut. This is called a Virginia jumbo. Shell the peanut carefully. Now, you can't grow a peanut from a roasted peanut. These peanuts have not been roasted. Let's just shell them out like that, and you have a couple of peanuts ready to plant. Perfectly beautiful peanuts. Now, I'm going to plant 3 of them in this, make a sort of a hill of them here, about 8 or 10 inches apart. Push them in, roughly an inch deep, like that, cover them over, and we'll come back to this peanut plant again and again. Very interesting thing, you know, the peanut has its blossoms above ground and its fruit under. Now we're going to talk about tomatoes, but I do want you to look at my corn. This was planted just a month ago and making some pretty good growth. Interesting thing about corn plants. Although the early varieties never get as tall as the late ones, they make a taller growth early in the year. We planted 5 different kinds of corn, which will mature over quite a long season. But now let's talk about tomatoes. And here I have a number of cages and stakes and different ways of growing tomatoes. But before I talk about them, I want to talk about what we've done to the soil. Tomatoes like a lot of nourishment. They also like a soil which has some limestone in it. It likes a rather close to a neutral soil. And we've added lime. We've added 5-10-5 fertilizer. There's been cow manure and compost on this soil, and it's been pretty well prepared for the plants. Now I'm going to show you the simplest possible way to grow tomatoes. This is a variety called Beefmaster, a good late variety. Simply dig a hole like this and set it in the ground. Firm it in, make a little saucer-like depression around that for water, and you take a piece of cardboard 2 inches wide and about 14 inches long and make a little collar. Use a stapler and staple it together, and that will keep the cutworms from biting that little fellow. Now I'm going to let that plant grow. By the way, this water has a soluble fertilizer in it. It gets the plants off to a quick start. I'm going to let this plant sprawl. This is one method of growth. Won't do a thing except perhaps we'll put some mulch on the ground, but I will lose some of the fruit to maybe some slugs. There might be a little dirt get on it. I'll get a big crop, but that's a good way to do if you're in a very windy location. Just allow your plants to sprawl on the ground. Now we have another method of culture. We're using a cage. Before we do this, I'm going to sit in this little plant. This variety is one. By the way, this plant was started just 5 weeks ago from seed. It makes a very nice growth. This is a small fry, a cherry tomato. Last summer we had one of these plants out here in a cage. One day we counted 600 tomatoes on it, all at the same time. And so that's what we're going to do again. A collar over the top to keep the cutworms away. Don't need any sprays. Give it a little drink of water. Like that. That fella's ready to go. Now comes the trick. We'll just set a cage made of wire, which you can buy at your hardware store or your garden center. This is called tomato guard. There's enough in a roll to make 6 of these cages, 4 feet tall. This one we cut in half, made only 2 feet tall. It has 4 by 6 inch openings in the wire, so you can reach right in and pick the fruit during the summer. Now you know, I won't have to do one blessed thing to this tomato plant all summer except pick the fruit. As it grows, if some of those stems come out through the edge, I'll just poke them back in again. It'll come right over here in a cascade with tomatoes. Now we come to another rather traditional method of culture, and that is staking tomatoes. I like to put the stakes in first. They are about 5 feet tall above the ground. I mean, a 6-foot stake pounded in. This variety, by the way, is a new one this year called Big Girl. Sounded like a good variety. I always try to try something new every year. That's the only way you can keep up on what is on the market. Again, we make this little thing and we put a collar around this. Doesn't hurt them a bit. We'll give that a drink of water. Now we're going to tie this. But in this instance, I have something else to show you first. Excuse me. Notice that we have little suckers coming from the sides of this stem. I want to remove those suckers because this plant is going to be trained all the way up the stake to a single stem. And we'll get quite a lot of fruit. It'll come fairly early, but it'll only have one stem. Use a soft piece of twine. In this instance, tie the twine firmly around the stake, good and solid around the stake, and then loosely around the plant so that there can be a little give and take and room for the plant to grow. There we are. Now that little fellow will start, and we'll tape that, and we'll come back and back to this thing on and on through the summer. Now we're coming back, and I'll show you another way that we've set out tomatoes. In this instance, instead of a cherry tomato, we have one of the real standards. Again, this is a Beefmaster, just like the one which we allowed to crawl on the ground, except this one we're going to put in a full-size cage. And this is all there is to it. We drive in a couple of stakes, slip the cage over the top of it like that, and then we will anchor the cage to the stakes so that it won't blow away. And all I'm going to do here again is to allow this plant to come up, and it will eventually come billowing out of the top of this cage, get the maximum amount of fruit on it, and there's good air circulation, great sunshine gets in, the bugs are not apt to bother it. I would say a cage is a great way to grow tomatoes because the cages themselves will last for years and years and years. Well, let me go from here. We're coming back to tomatoes. Time and time and time again this summer, we'll talk about the various varieties that I have. I should say one thing about varieties. Most people, for years, have tended to buy a variety, maybe Big Boy, which is a good big tomato, but it's late. I say you should plant an early, a mid-season, and a late. And if you were to go out and buy a 6-pack and you only wanted 6 plants altogether and they're all the same variety, why don't you take a couple of friends with you, each of you buy one of a different bearing season, and then split them up so that each of you will have early, mid-season, and late tomatoes. Next, we come to sweet potatoes. The first thing I want to tell you about sweet potatoes is they too like a poor soil. They like an acid soil, otherwise they'll get scabbed just the way an Irish potato does. They like a well-drained soil. So I've made this mound here, a long mound in the garden, and set my plants in it. I had a letter just this morning from someone who said, "Where can I buy sweet potato seeds?" Well, you don't get them from seeds. You get the tubers, ordinary tubers, and you know, you've perhaps planted one in a bottle in the kitchen when you were a child, and the sprouts come out from it, and this is what you get. You get these sprouts like this, which you simply take off the potato, and this is what you plant and not seeds. Now, if you're planting sweet potatoes in your garden, poor soil if you can, not enriched, not even lime on it, because they tend to become very exuberant in growth, 3, 4, 5 foot stems trailing on the ground in all directions. Set them in the ground like this. Well, dig one of them up to show you how you plant it. Set them about 1.5 feet apart. Stick them in the ground like this. You can plant those so fast. Well, now, I don't have room in this garden to allow any one crop to take up so much area. So what I'm going to do with my sweet potatoes is to pick up one of these little fellows and plant it in a basket, an ordinary bushel basket, poor soil. Stick that fellow right down in there, just like that. Now that's going to be my sweet potato crop this summer. There's an interesting thing about these sweet potatoes. If they have all the room in the world to grow, they'll make long, stringy tubers, which are not very good. What we're looking for is chunky ones. Well, chunky ones grow on dry soil without too much fertilizer, and this is what we're going to do with ours. Have it in a poor situation. Well, let's go in the greenhouse. I'm going to plant that strawberry barrel and answer some questions. I'd also like you to look at a Madonna lily. Now, the Madonna lily we grew in pots, but you can grow this in your garden. One of the very, very nice species lilies that comes from the Mediterranean region. I wish you could smell its fragrance. Just as delightful, and it's longer lasting than many lilies. One of the things which I like about it, plant them in the fall. The leaves come up in the fall, lie on the surface of the ground all winter without being harmed, and then blossom in the early summer. Well, let's talk about planting a strawberry barrel. And I'm going to pull off this jacket here. We can get to this operation a little bit easier. This, until yesterday, was a nail keg. We bored some 2-inch holes at various intervals and started to plant this strawberry barrel for you. First of all, we bored holes in the bottom. You can see those are for drainage because we don't want this plants to become waterlogged. On the other hand, we have to be careful that we can get water all the way down to these lower plants. And so we put in the center of this a cylinder of hardware cloth, about 4 inches in diameter. Now we'll put some sand in that, and we can then pull our hose in the middle. The water will go all the way down, permeate sidewards, laterally, and get to the roots of these plants. Now in setting them in, ordinarily I would be planting this type of thing in April when the plants are dormant. But we'll just put one in now to show you how it's done. This soil, by the way, is a mixture of about half compost and half garden soil. We'll kind of poke this little fellow through here. They'll look a little ragged for a few days, as though they need to have their hair combed, but after that they'll begin to make new growth, and they'll freshen right up, and all the leaves will face the sunshine. I was my wife and I were visiting our daughter in California this winter. Her strawberry barrel had fruit on it and blossoms on it right in the midwinter. Now we'll go on here and we'll eventually fill this all in with soil, and I seem to find a place to plant one more. Get one right over in here. Then what we will do eventually is to plant them out on the top. All across the top of this we'll have strawberry plants as well, hanging over it. This little fellow doesn't want to poke through. This is an ever-bearing variety, which is kind of nice. You can't get a great big crop from them, but it's a fun type of thing to do. And you will get some berries, and you get them over a long period of time. You may have to fight the local squirrels and the birds for them. The robins will be your friends if you have some strawberry plants in the garden. Then, as I say, we'll fill this whole thing in, plant strawberry plants on the top. They'll cascade all down over the edge. This is something that you can do and have fun. There's something put on your patio or on a balcony. Well, now let's get to a few questions. We have just a short time today for questions. Dear Jim, my iris bed has plenty of foliage but very few buds this season. Any suggestions to increase flowering for next year? Well, the reason that you don't have flowers is because your plants have grown too long without being divided and given a fresh lease on life in some fresh soil. Well, we're going to be doing that right after our iris plants finish blossoming, and so you'll see me do it this summer. Another question, what do I do about suckers growing up from the ground around my peace rose? Dig away the soil from around that plant, and you'll find a large, heavy root going down, and that's where the suckers are coming from. Cut them off as close to that main stem as you can. Otherwise, they'll take over all the nourishment, and your peace rose will be deprived of nourishment and eventually die. Last August, I started a compost pile. I did everything you said, but when I looked a few days ago, it didn't seem to decay at all. What's wrong? Well, your compost needs more nitrogen to allow the decay process to take effect. What I would suggest you do is to dig it over, this time sprinkle some complete fertilizer with it. That will accelerate the decay process, and of course the compost will be richer because of it. What causes disease on the roots of cabbage? Is there any spray that will control this disease? Well, we don't know what kind of disease you're talking about. If it's a true disease, it's probably club root. That causes a swelling on the stem. The plants wilt on the first sunny day. Use a lot of lime in your soil, and use a material called PCNB, sold on the name Terrachlor. Mix that in and then water your plants. They might come out of it. The other thing that could have happened, you could have root maggots. And if you dig up one of your plants and find these little white worms growing on the roots, then you know you have root maggots. Saturate the soil with diazinon, and that will take care of it. You know, I hate to use some of these insecticides, but sometimes it's an alternative of either using them or getting nothing. And be assured of one thing, that all of those vegetables that you buy in the grocery store have had these insecticides on the soil so that the commercial man could grow them so that he could sell them. Dear Mr. Crockett, only 2 of our 6 dogwood trees bloom. What should I do to make the other trees flower? Well, there's 2 or 3 things. It may be that your trees are too young. It could be also that they're too shaded, and I think that might be it. If you notice, naturally the dogwoods grow on the edge of the forest, so give them more sunshine if you can. Well, that's all that I have time for today. On my next program, I'm going to construct a compost bin. You'll see just how it's done. I'm going to plant a rhododendron, and I'm going to show you how to multiply your rhododendrons.
Well, this is Jim Crockett in Crockett's Victory Garden. I hope you enjoy the program every week.